All right, guys, AMC is currently in a pump and dump and pump. All right, this is what we call it. I think this is where AMC is at in the cycle. Where are we, guys? We're in November of 2020, okay? November of 2020, there's a lot of correlation right now in the cycle with a lot of different stocks and cryptocurrencies. Okay, why I think we're here, why I think this is a massive fake out. And I have a lot of other stocks I'm going to be showing you here that have already done this before. If you guys were here on the stream prior to most of this pump or dump, I pulled some cryptocurrencies and stocks that had already pumped prior to this, and had the same kind of a sequence, right, where it pumps, it dumps, and then it starts climbing back up. AMC though is dragging out and is taking a little bit longer. So I'm gonna talk about this and talk about a few key things we need to hold and have go through before this is even a possibility, right? So first thing is we need to respect the current support trend line here. So this is step one. Okay, we can come down to new lows. Worst case, if that were to happen and AMC came down to those levels, it would have to spring the same day, meaning that it would have to come down after hours just like it did here, and it would have to spring back up very quickly, or else we would be looking for more downside for quite some time. That would be the worst case scenario. But we've been through this over and over again. This is not the first time AMC has pumped and dumped like this. But luckily, with that pattern and that specific cycle we're tracking right now, November of 2020, which I'm going to talk about the market as well because there's correlation with that. But if that is the pattern that AMC ends up playing out here, I've laid out a roadmap of what I think is going to happen based on that. And I have a very important stock that we're going to be comparing this to. So here is the projection that I have based on the levels that we've been tracking on AMC and more importantly, the parallel channel little fractal setup that we have here with this, right? So because I think we're back here in November, the first thing we have to look at is this massive, parallel channel with a volatility zone and a support zone. So this is taken back from 2020 when everything got shorted. Okay, we are taking the high and the low of that, creating a parallel channel, and there has been correlation that we gravitate into this parallel channel once every year. Now that happened for this 2-year-long cycle on AMC. Right now, it's showing that there's a possibility right now that we are not tracking the same cycle that we've been tracking for a little bit now. So some of the points of interest might be shifted a month. And so the way that works is typically it happens around the beginning or end of the year. And this has all to do with options, right? But we've seen this change happen with other stocks before, like Tilray, Nikola, and they show the same shift in like that 1 month shift in the cycle, meaning that things might be pumping and dumping. Instead of August would be September, and instead of October would be November. But this is just a speculation. The fact that things pumped and dumped very quickly as well, happening after hours in just a matter of 10 minutes, that can also be considered a very large error in the cycle, meaning that some kind of hedge fund or company had to cover very quickly before the algorithm came back in check and had everything flowing back in order, okay? So with that, if we are tracking this, you guys know how big I am with at least this part of the technical analysis on AMC, is that once we come into this channel, okay, typically we will be triggering a lot of these indicators that trigger like a squeeze indicator or something that is bullish on AMC, like sometimes the basic indicators, RSI, and some of these cross indicators showing that if the price is extremely oversold and it has crossed into a territory or has crossed in this case, we have the blue spot on the weekly chart. If that crosses, that's extremely bullish. And with this setup here, we would have a cross on that as well. So if we gravitate back into the support channel and get rejected, create a projector pattern, then this thing would cross through like it did back in January. Why I think this is just a bigger version of what's happening down here in November. Okay, so here is the cycle correlation with SPY, because SPY is the major indice in the markets, tracks everything basically. And I want to talk about why this is relevant here, why it's important. Okay, so here's SPY, here's the lovely SPY. Okay, because I believe we're in a larger version of this that happened back here in November, that does apply to the entire market, in that if this is a fractal, a massive fractal, waiting to come back up, well, what are the markets doing, right? They're basically doing a mini version, or a large version of what was a mini version of 2020, which means that the markets fell for quite some time, started to come back up, and then what happened right here? Well, the markets are now showing that they're ready to come down. And there's a lot of these indicators right now. The ROC indicator is showing a rejection at resistance, meaning that the markets are probably going to come down at least to the 440 range. What that means is if we stick in there for a little bit, maybe a month or two, that would be a breather stage, just like we experienced back in November of 2020. There was a breather stage here before the markets came back in check and started to climb back up. That is all we need here. That's for confirmation. If the markets are bullish, they're very close to resistance, this thing would come down, get that breather, and then start climbing back up, okay, through October time, which means if the markets are bullish and they're going to start reversing back up, you're going to start to see all these crypto coins, meme coins start to rally. But that is good news for AMC. Again, just a larger version of what's happening in November of 2020. Okay, so that's check one. The next check here is, well, if we're coming through and we buzz through the parallel and volatility zone, we would come up to right around that $30 range just on AMC. This is not including APE. This is without APE in the equation. Okay. So if that happens, again, we talk about the parallel channel being a potential hedge zone, but because this is a new cycle, or there's a possibility that this is a new cycle, then that basically means that a lot of these levels that we're tracking could potentially be blown through and create a new trigger here on what could be a pretty massive move. So this could just continue to go up. There are other stocks and crypto fractals we're tracking that call for a bigger run, a bigger rally. But my target here, based on just technicals and the levels that stocks typically tend to go to after they've been shorted for this long, okay, is going to be right around that $30 range, which was a major hedge zone back in the day, right? So we had the $40 range here. If you watch that first video that talks about delta hedging, okay, that mid zone, that $40 range, that's where they opened the contracts back here in 2021. Eventually the price exceeded that volume, but then they shorted it to hedge and close each flag on an expiration date around the $40 mark. Because the charts have been adjusted, that is the $30 range here. So basically that is my target for AMC going into this macro POI. Now, let's take a look at why I believe this is like a major possibility here in the market. So the way this pattern is structured, okay, you can see that it's different from November of 2021, because November of 2021, okay, prior to it, if we're taking everything into account, the overall structure of a pattern does not look the same. Like if we're tracking it from here to here, okay, this is showing like something else, right? Like it comes up, it trades sideways. A lot of price action going on here. The AMC, it almost looks inverse, right? So with these POIs, we treat them the same way. We treat them, okay, as soon as a POI hits, we track the structure of the pattern, which right now is very promising for November. It's saying that we would start coming back up tomorrow, potentially to that $6 range, so Friday. But this can also mean that they take this opportunity to bring everything back down, right? The shorts bring everything back down and close it around below $5 for Friday. And then coming into the next week, like it's a psychological price action, guys. They bring it back down and then they bring it back up because they have to, right? They can't just play these games forever. Okay, so they're going to bring it back up. This is just going to be a second guess yourself game here that they're playing. They're trying to shake you out. That's a pump and dump and pump and dump and pump and dump, right? That's this massive pattern right here. It's just a shakeout pattern. So if we're looking at November here, you can see some of these are flipped. Some of these patterns are flipped to fit with this macro agenda in the market right now, and also fit with the potential new POI that we would be tracking, which would be sometime in November and then as well September time. So we have both of them tracking here. This is just a little projection based on what I'm looking at here. Now, the pattern that I'm going to be comparing here is GME. So GameStop, this is 1-to-1, guys. So this pattern had played out prior to the big squeeze or mini squeeze, whatever you want to call it, on GME that happened. Okay, what is this pattern? First of all, you got to take your angles here, right? So this pattern was ascending for quite some time. It started low. It started to shake off, and then the shorts got pressure. They got pressure put on them. It took some time, though. This is October of 2020 all the way to January. So this is a little different. We have July going into October. So the overall structure of the pattern looks very similar. You can see that it's not a quick pump and dump, but that's why we're using November of 2020 on AMC, because they were able to do that. But here, you can see it pumps. It takes a little bit of time. It dumps, trades sideways, comes back up, dumps again, up, and then dumps again, and then it goes. Because these guys are constantly trying to put pressure, but the reality is that there's an algorithm doing that, and the algorithm is making these calculations why some of these patterns that we track are so structured and look so similar that we've seen before. Okay, so here's GME for a reference pattern, but I really like this one. And if you zoom out of the chart, this looks really good, but this is what needs to happen, okay? If we're going to be in this, what is this parabolic arc setup, then AMC must respect the support trend line on the way up, regardless of how long this takes, right? Because this is a sucky, like, back and forth pattern, because the shorts have to cover, right? If this stock, if the data that we're getting in here is just high short interest over and over again, FTDs through the roof, okay, we're starting to see the same but higher levels that we saw before, what happened in June. So this is really big stuff, guys, but nothing happens overnight, right? We're not going to see this just pump, dump, and then pump to crazy levels. Sure, that can happen, but because the chart has ran before and they've taken the opportunity to short it down for years, you do have to track you do have to track it slowly on the way up as well. That is the more realistic scenario, but we have a lot of these other stocks like AI, Upstart, okay, Tilray right now pumping as well. Nikola, these guys are pumping. They dump for a little bit, and then they keep pumping because the markets are telling us that they're finally bullish. Like, they want to turn around. They want to keep going up. So that's what I got, man. I think this is going to happen based on some of the events that are currently playing out in the markets. I think there's a lot of correlation with that. This is my projection. I think that if AMC is going to pump here in the near future, these guys are going to do whatever it takes to make sure that retail is shaken out, because that's what the algorithms do, guys. There's periods in time where they do this type of a thing. Now I'm going to show you as well another cryptocurrency that has already done this on the micro scale. So we're going to take Doge here, You guys know how I roll with these patterns. Okay, but what is Doge doing right now? Okay, craziest thing. We come here, and we're paying attention to this up to the POI, guys. So the POI is where there's a lot of volume. If we take the structure of this pattern and compare it to AMC right now, why I'm very big on looking for patterns in the market that follow a similar structure, because I believe the algorithm that is doing this has to do it in a way that helps the algorithm make money. So if they're leveraging positions with each other, sometimes some of these pairs in the crypto market, you can see that they will kind of trade inverse to each other in a way, and you see the algorithm play out that same pattern. But here's that pattern, guys. That we even took Doge here the other day and compared the pump and dump little structure here to AMC's chart. And if we take a look at this, it's very simple, but what is it making, right? So we're gonna structure this a little bit different, right? We have the ascending trend line of support. It's very basic stuff. Ascending trend line of support. We have a pump followed by a dump, okay? A dump, and then it eventually comes back. So it's a pump, dump, pump, which is what I'm expecting. Pump, dump, pump. Then the price rides down, trades sideways for a little bit, rides down, trades sideways for a little bit, bounces off of support. You can see here it bounces basically twice, right? Twice. It rides back up, creates another, we would call this a double top setup, right? Then it creates a mini projector pattern, and then things start to climb back up. So this is just one example of the algorithm doing this. I can pull up another one. The algorithm loves to do this, but this is a 5-minute, right? We pick up Sol, and we go on the larger macro, and the same structure of a pattern. It's laid out a little bit differently, but the structure is very similar as well, right? You have your pump, your dump. Okay, you even have this little mid phase here as well. It's like 2 low hoops. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then boom. Right? AMC's is a little different. And mind you, I created this projection here, so it doesn't have to look that the same way. I'm just using it as a reference pattern here to what could potentially happen here in the future. But obviously, things are not going to be one-to-one. This is just my projection, and I think it's a fair one to look at when it comes to what the rest of the market is doing, because eventually these stocks will end up going back up. I mean, things can't go down forever, especially if the fundamentals are there and they're right. If it's any other stock that has crappy fundamentals, I would I would disagree, but that is just not the case right now for AMC. Hence why the price has not crossed below the 4 or the 370 range. Okay. All right, guys. I'm gonna leave it there today. If you guys liked the video, make sure you hit a thumbs up. And if you want more content, and when I go live, hit that little notification bell and subscribe as well. Alrighty, guys. We'll see you on the next little stream here. Bye-bye.